Good morning. Hope you're having a great week. It's Monday, December 8th, 8:55 a.m. Central Standard Time, local time here in Oklahoma City. I'm at home if you can't tell. So I'm going to try to do a load board video. Let's go ahead and switch over to load board. And I'll also try to catch you up with what's going on with me because that's primarily what this channel is. It's just documenting my trucking journey. But people love load board videos, so um, there was never a plan for this to be a load board video channel, but I did a couple load boards and I get a lot of requests for people to do, load board searches. So I try to appease. So let's, you know what? Let me pause this. Let's look at the truck count. That's one of the things we look at all the time when we're doing load board videos is Landstar's truck count. So let me pause this while I pull that up. All right. So here it is. I can't remember exactly what the last one was. I think it was 7,600, and now we're at 7,463. This is the number of active trucks. This is not the number of trucks in Landstar's fleet. This is the number of active trucks in Landstar's fleet. And this number is constantly changing. People get put out of service if they go over 120 days for their truck inspection, or if they have their own trailer, then their trailer inspection, or if you like any kind of licensing or certification or inspection or anything. If anything goes over, and then I won't say an expiration date because Landstar requires a lot of things to be done well before expiration. Like DOT inspections are good for a year. Landstar requires them to be done every 120 days. If you go over 120 days on a DOT inspection, they'll put you out of service. So basically, if anything goes over an expiration date or a Landstar requirement, they'll put you out of service. And people are constantly going in and out of service. Let's refresh the truck count. Right now it's at 7,463, and it's still at 7,463. Sometimes you can refresh this, and like every minute it'll be a different number. But so it fluctuates quite a bit. It looks like maybe we've gone down a couple hundred drivers. This number was over 13,000 whenever I first leased on with Landstar during the freight boom. So Landstar has like, I don't know what the percentage is, somewhere around 40% less drivers or less trucks, not drivers, but trucks than whenever I initially leased on. And I'm not familiar with what their, you know, number of trucks has been up and down throughout all the years. I've only been monitoring it since I've been leased on for about the last 5 years. But yeah, while the freight's been bad for the last couple of years, but it's like 2.5 years at this point. It's almost 3 years of a bad freight market at this point. And the number of trucks in Landstar's fleet has just been going down that whole time. There were short periods of just like a couple of months where we lost like 1,000 trucks. Like but it's been just a slow decline throughout most of it. But there was like 1 year where like every 3 months we were losing like 1,000 trucks. I can't remember exactly what year that was. But yeah, the freight market still sucks. There are people out there being successful, but the market in general sucks. And I just read a headline the other day that CRST was basically ceasing operations for all of their non-dedicated stuff. So basically, all of their spot market loads, they're just shutting all of their spot market divisions down, and they're only going to be running basically dedicated stuff. That was just a headline I read. I don't know the details of it, but CRST ceasing a big part of their company's operations and giving everybody 60-day notice that they're getting terminated. CRST is one of the, it's a big trucking company. Small companies, owner operators go out of business every day, but big companies like Yellow or what was that really big one that we had go out of business back in 2019? Celadon, and CRST, companies like that going out of business, that doesn't happen every day. Now, CRST is not going out of business. They're just shutting down a division of their operations, which is a pretty significant division. It just shows you how bad the spot market is. If you're running spot market freight, if that is, what your business is based off of, you're probably struggling. So yeah. Anyway, let's take a look at the loads. We have 78,000 available loads on Landstar's load board. That's fairly normal, and it's meaningless. Let me show you a couple of things here. I try to show this in all the videos when I'm doing load boards because context is important. Information is worthless unless you understand the information, and you need context to understand the information. So, 78,000 loads on Landstar's load board. All right, how many of those are contract loads? So let's do direct shipper, yes. We only want to see how many loads there are that are actually direct customers with Landstar agents. 5,216. So that out of 78 minus 5, that means 73 out of the 78,000 loads on Landstar's load board are reposted spot market crap. They're basically make-believe loads. Why do I say that? Well, what Landstar agents do is they will go and look at loads that are posted on the spot market from whatever load board, DAT or CH Robinson, or I can't even remember all the names of the big load boards. But they will go and repost those loads onto Landstar's load board. They don't verify the rate. They don't verify anything. They just are. It's like creating a sales lead. It's an advertisement. They're just throwing it onto Landstar's load board with fictitious information. And then when a driver calls in to book the load, then they'll say, all right, let me check on it. And they'll either put you on hold or tell you that they're going to call you back, and they will call on the load and get the real information. And if the load's already covered, if it doesn't exist anymore, they're not going to call you back. And if you're on hold, they'll flip back over and go, it's already covered. I'll take it down. Click. There might be 10 or 20 different Landstar agents that post that one single load onto Landstar's load board. And that load may already be covered. They don't actively check and update the listings on Landstar's load board. So the vast majority of the spot market loads that are sitting on Landstar's load board are posted at inaccurate prices, or they're already covered and the agents just haven't taken them down yet. So it's all, I usually don't even look at spot market loads on Landstar's load board because they're just a massive waste of time. Even if you manage to book one, they cancel all the time because it's a lowest bid market. So if you book one too far in advance, somebody else is going to, underbid you on the load, and they're just going to say, oh, the load canceled. They'll call the Landstar agent and say, oh, that load canceled. And then it's gone. You just wasted a whole bunch of time on the load. You have a lot of issues with payments on spot market loads. If they tell you that they're going to give you any kind of extra pay, detention or layover or anything like that, I have never been paid detention or layover or any kind of extra pay on a spot market load. So they're just, I avoid them. The only time I'll ever do spot market loads is if I'm incredibly desperate, because they're just a tremendous waste of time, and you can really get screwed over on them. So 5,216 real loads on Landstar's load board. Now let's look and see how many profitable loads there are on Landstar's load board. So let's look at the minimum revenue, and let's do $2.50 a mile. $2.50 a mile. Oh, that's the revenue. Let's do it the rate per mile. That's this box. $2.50. $2.50 a mile is really good. Well, all of the prices that you see on Landstar's load board are the full rate prices. I get 65% of the line haul and 100% of the fuel surcharge of whatever prices you see on here. So something that's listed at $2.50 a mile, I get approximately 70% of that. So it's $1.75 a mile. And $1.75 a mile is roughly the break even for most owner operators. And if they think that their break even is, like $1.10 a mile, then they don't understand their business. They don't, like, they're not factoring in all of their costs. Once you factor in all of your business expenses, all of your costs, which paying yourself is part of those costs. Like, if you're not paying yourself, then how do you buy food, clothes, pay for your car insurance, your mortgage, all that stuff? You have to pay the driver. That's part of your business. And a lot of people don't factor that in. But $1.75 a mile is the break even for most owner operators, according to my calculations. So $2.50 a mile is basically break even. We went down from 5,200 to 3,600. We lost a lot of loads. There's a lot of loads on Landstar's load board that are running below operating cost. Now, sorry, I heard something. I think it's just the vent. I think the heater came on. Now let's do minimum revenue. Let's do a minimum of $1,000, which would be $700. And how many did we lose right there? We went from 3,600 to 3,000 because $1.75 a mile. There's a big difference if you're hauling a load 1,000 miles versus 10 miles. So if you're hauling a load 1,000 miles at $1.75 a mile, that's $1,750. If you're hauling it 10 miles, then that's, what is that? $17.50. So there is no magical rate per mile that's just good. It depends on the context. $20 a mile, like, if you just think, oh, like any load that's $20 a mile, I'll take that. What if there's a load for 1 mile that's paying $20 a mile? That's a terrible load. So all of the context matters on whether or not a load is good. It's not just rate per mile. It's not just revenue per day. It's where it's picking up, where it's going, how heavy is it? Is it hazmat? Like, all of the context matters. Like, how long does it take to get loaded or unloaded? Oh, you have to set around for a week to get loaded. You have to set around for a week to get unloaded. Things like that. Like, all of the context matters. So let's look at, all right, I recall somebody asking for, I get a lot of requests on flatbed freight. There's a lot of people looking to come over to Landstar and they want to see flatbed stuff. So let's just leave the settings where we're at right now. And let's choose flatbed. Let's not do lowboy or anything else. Let's just do flatbed. Because whenever you start doing lowboy and all the other trailer types, a lot of that is specialized, oversized, overweight type stuff. So let's just do flatbed. And 342 loads. So I'm going to scroll through these 342 loads. While, sorry, I was sorting it by revenue. I'm going to scroll through these 342 loads while I talk about what's going on with me. I'm not going to talk about the loads. You can pause the video and zoom in on it or whatever. Somebody asked me to zoom in on stuff. I could do that. It would be a pain in the butt, zooming in on every little thing, on all the information, all this stuff. This is being uploaded in 1920 by 1080, which should be high enough resolution that your application, you should be able to zoom in on it. If you can't zoom in, then watch it on a different application that allows you to zoom. The resolution should be high enough that you can read all of this information. But I'm just going to scroll through these 342 loads while I talk about what's been going on with me. And remember, everything, all the prices that you see are full rate. You get approximately somewhere in the ballpark of 70% of whatever you see. So, um, what's been going on with me is I did that. I picked up that load out of Nashville and took it to the Dallas area, Fort Worth, Texas, and the trailer had a lot of issues. And I made the decision to go ahead and deliver the load and then drive to Oklahoma City and then put the trailer in the shop because I expected the trailer could be in the shop for a week or two. And I didn't want to sit for a week or two in Nashville or Dallas. I was planning on going home anyway, so I made the decision to just go ahead and do everything and then put it in the shop whenever I got home. Well, whenever I got to Oklahoma City, I called TA here in town and asked them if they could. I explained the issue with the mud flap bar, and I explained that they might have to cut and weld um, a new bracket on there and stuff like that. And I asked them, I said, "Can your shop do all of that stuff?" And they said, "Yes, yes, just bring it in. We can do everything." I listed off all the issues with the trailer, and they said that they could work on all that stuff. They lied to me. They were really, really slow. There were like two mechanics working on things, and there were like five mechanics hanging out in the office with nothing to do. It was a holiday week, and they were really slow and desperate for money, and they just lied to me to get me in there. So after I got in there and they took a look at, oh, there's a load coming out of Oklahoma City going to Utah, 44,000 pounds, 438 a mile, 4,200 bucks. That looks decent. It's really heavy. Max weight load. Whenever you see weights on here that are like rounded numbers, like 44,000, that is probably not the exact weight. That's a ballpark weight. Whenever you see weights that are exact, like 9,729 pounds, that's probably what it actually weighs. But a lot of times you'll see loads on here that are like 44,000 pounds. And what a lot of these lazy agents do is they just put random crap in there. Or one of the things that like CGI does, that has the Saya account, is they'll put the max contract weight on all their loads. So the max contract weight for Saya loads is 42,000 pounds. They'll just put 42,000 on everything. VAM, the VAM agency, which also has Saya contracts and they have FedEx contracts, they have the same contract max weight of 42,000, but they'll put 32,000 pounds on all their loads because they think that that's the average weight of all the loads, which is complete BS. Saya and all these LTLs try to squeeze as much as they can into the trailers, and the trailers are really close to the max contract weight, every single one that I've ever hauled. Unless you're on some kind of dedicated run where they're hauling very specific things. Like I've hauled lithium batteries out of Oklahoma City several times for FedEx going to Southern California, and it's the exact same load every time. And I can't remember what the weight is on that load, but whenever they're just putting random crap in the trailer, they try to squeeze every pound they can in. But anyway, TA lied to me. And once they told Landstar that they couldn't work on the mud flap because it required welding and cutting on a frame, the mud flap bar is attached to the tandems. The tandem has like a bar on it that is like a frame for the tandems. And apparently that is still considered a frame. And shops like TA cannot cut or weld or do anything on a frame. Only a dealer can do that. So once TA told Landstar that they, couldn't work on the mud flap issue because it required cutting and welding a frame, Landstar just told them not to do anything on the trailer. They were going to have utility come over and pick it up and do all the work on the trailer. So that happened. I didn't sit around and wait on utility to pick the trailer up. I just went to the house. I talked with Landstar and I talked with utility and I talked with TA. I talked with everybody to try to figure out what was going on. And utility basically told me that they wouldn't be able to pick up the trailer today. They would probably be able to pick it up on Wednesday, the day before Thanksgiving, and they were closed Thanksgiving and Thursday and Friday, and they're closed normally on the weekends. So they said they might not be able to pick up the trailer until Monday of next week. They're hoping that you know Landstar will send over authorizations so that they can get it picked up that day. Landstar did not send the email like they were supposed to authorizing utility to pick it up. So I ended up having to play phone tag with everybody to make sure that Landstar sent the proper. Um, what's the deal with this? I'm seeing these are more of these Oklahoma City to Roosevelt, Utah loads, and they are at different prices. Looks like it's the same agency. Usually, whenever you see the same load posted several times at different prices, it's agents bidding against each other on spot market loads. And I have this thing set up to only show contract freight. That's another shady thing that these agents will do is they will mislabel loads. They're just trying to generate a sales lead. Sales and marketing people are really scummy. They're professional liars. So those might be spot market loads since they're posting so many of them. They may actually be contract freight. I don't know. But you can't trust anything you see on the load board because the agents are just really, really scummy. Anyway, um, I'm not sure if the trailer made it over on Wednesday. Utility told me it was going to take a minimum of 16 hours just to do diagnostics on the trailer to give a quote. So it was looking like it was going to take several days to get, the trailer fixed. It was looking like it's going to be a couple weeks. So I waited until I think it was the Monday after the holiday to call utility and ask what was going on. No, actually, I didn't bother calling them on Monday because they told me that they wouldn't even be able to do the diagnostic on Wednesday. They told me that they would hopefully be able to pick up the trailer on Wednesday and then they would do the diagnostic on Monday and Tuesday. So I called Wednesday and asked them what was going on. And they told me that they had sent a quote to Landstar the previous day at around 11:48 a.m. They gave me the exact time. And Landstar never replied to the email with the quote. Um, so I called Landstar, and Landstar got irritated with me calling, and because I wasn't able to tell them what email address it was sent to, and they were like, "This is why they should be calling us and not you." And I was like, "Okay, I'll ask them to call you then." So I called utility back, told utility that Landstar got mad at me because I couldn't tell them what email address the email went to. And it didn't appear that they were working on it. It looks like it fell through the cracks. So they said, okay, we'll give them a call. So then I waited. They told me that the quote was for a little over $1,300 and 8.5 hours of labor to fix the trailer. And they were not going to work on one of the tires. They didn't. I wasn't talking with a mechanic. I was talking with an office person, and he said that there were no tires on the quote. The quote was just for the mud flaps and the ABS. Um, so I may have to put the trailer back in the shop again after I get it back for the tires. But so then I waited around for a couple more days, and I think it was Friday morning of last week that I called them and asked them, what the status was, and they told me that they got approvals and they started working on it, and they weren't sure if they were going to be able to finish it by Friday. Um, And when I called, everybody was out to lunch. So he wasn't able to check with the mechanics to get an ETA of whether or not it was going to be fixed on Friday. But he said the issue is also not whether or not they get it fixed on Friday. He said that because they have issues with Landstar making payments, their policy, utility trailers policy with Landstar, Landstar specifically because of non-payment issues, is that they will not release Landstar equipment until they've been fully paid for the work. Because Landstar doesn't pay their damn bills with utility trailer. So I said, well, Landstar is not going to pay by the end of Friday, so I'm definitely not getting the trailer today. I said, can you guys call me whenever, everything's over and done with? And they said, yeah. So Wade, utility trailer, is supposed to call me once the trailer, is paid for and they're able to release it. And I'm still sitting around waiting for that phone call. So basically, I'm waiting on Landstar to pay for the work. The work should have been done on Friday. So now we're just waiting on Landstar to pay for the work. And then I'll be able to pick up the trailer. The other issue that I dealt with was compliance. I had to get a DOT inspection done and send in my inspection report, my maintenance report. So I got the inspection done at TA, which that was a lot of drama that I talked about in a previous video. They tried to fail me on a couple of things that there was nothing wrong. They were really slow. They're commission based mechanics, and they tried to get some work out of me, and I fought with them for a couple of hours, and they finally admitted that they were wrong and passed me on the DOT inspection. So then I had to submit my maintenance report. So I submitted that, and it took a week for Landstar to process my maintenance report, and I had to call them a couple of times to get them to process it. But they finally processed my maintenance report Friday afternoon. So now I was out of service. We were looking at the trucks that were active. I was inactive out of service until Friday afternoon because it took Landstar so long to process my maintenance report. But now I'm back in service, active truck, but I don't have a trailer, and I'm sitting around waiting on Landstar to pay for the $1,300 service at utility so that I can pick the trailer up. And I've got my load alert set up, and I'm looking for a load to book to leave the house on. The trailer should be available within the next day or two. The thing that I'm concerned with now is that it's been over 10 days that I've been inactive, that I've been sitting. And now I'm going to have the problem of trailer utilization trying to steal the trailer from me, because trailer utilization has no idea what's going on. They don't know the trailer's been in the shop for 2 weeks. All they know is that I'm an idle truck. I've been idle for 2 weeks. So after 10 days of idle, they'll steal your trailer from you. And so at any moment, after dealing with all of this drama I've been dealing with for the last couple of weeks, at any moment, trailer utilization is going to send me an email telling me that a driver is on the way to take the trailer from me. And then I'm going to have to escalate to a manager in trailer utilization and argue with them for a couple of hours, trying to get them to not take the trailer from me. And then they're going to put their foot down and get defensive and tell me that I'm going to have to book a load in the next 30 minutes. And, that I've dealt with this crap with them several times. I actually asked trailer maintenance if they could put the trailer into a status so that trailer utilization wouldn't take the trailer from me. And trailer maintenance was like, why would trailer utilization take the trailer from you? The trailer's in the shop. And I said, well, yeah, that makes sense, but trailer utilization isn't rational. They're going to take this trailer from me because of how long it's been sitting. And they said, no, they won't. I said, yes, they will. They've done it to me several times. And trailer maintenance just basically told me, trailer utilization won't do that to you, which is not true because they have done that to me several times. So yeah, I'm not through with the drama yet. Hopefully, I'm able to book a load pretty soon. Before, let me actually check my email, see if Trailer Utilization has sent me an email today. Nope, no email. All right, that is all of the flatbed loads. So now let's go back and edit the search. Let's get rid of flatbed and let's start looking for loads for me. So what do I want to choose? I want to choose all van, but let's go in and let's deselect van with liftgate. Well, there's a whole bunch of vans that I don't have. I don't have roller floors and all kinds of stuff, but van trailer with liftgate, VNLG, we'll deselect that one because that's a common one that we'll see. And then we're going to go into specialized, needing power only. We're going to select that, and we're going to select all containers because a container load should be a power only load, but agents don't list things properly. So let's look for loads coming out of the Oklahoma City area. Let's do a 250-mile radius because we want to get all of the Dallas area. You know what? Let's start with a shorter radius, 100 miles, and we'll look for loads that are paying less. Max weight, let's put 45,000 pounds. And there's only 11 loads. And this is just contract freight. Let's go down here and let's do something else. Let's do flags. Team. No, I'm not a team. I can't haul team freight. That didn't get rid of any loads. So now let's look at these 11 loads. Tulsa, Oklahoma to Florida, paying $252 a mile. That is a horrendous load. Lawton, Oklahoma, one of the Landstar agents has a contract with, I forget what tire company it is, but they have loads coming out of Lawton all the time that generally don't pay very well. So Lawton to Bialia, Mississippi, I'm not sure how to pronounce that. It's a mediocre load. It's not bad. But $295 a mile, paying $1,700. Again, I only get about 70% of whatever you see on here. Bessie, Oklahoma to Midland, Texas, heavy load, short load, $1,200, not a very good load. Sand Springs, Oklahoma to Pasadena, Texas, and not a very good load. Not a horrible load, not very good. Enid, Oklahoma to Adair, Oklahoma. This is only 68 miles, and it's paying $1,100. Just shuttling a trailer 70 miles. Let's see if there's any notes on this. Like, if this is something that they have a lot of these loads, that would be amazing. I would love to just shuttle trailers back and forth between Adair and Enid for $1,000. Well, I would make, what is this, $1,100? I would make like $775 or something like that on the load. But if I could do 2 of those per day, that would be really good. Even 1 per day would be enough to live off of. But there are no notes on this, so it's only listed 1 time, so it looks like it's just a one-time load, not something that they have lots of or happens on a regular basis. Uh-oh, a load disappeared. Which one was it? It was that Pallet City, Florida one. That was a terrible load. Why would that disappear? Why would somebody book that load? That was a horrendous load. All right. Now let's extend the range out to 250 miles. And we have 81 loads. Well, if I'm going to drive that far, then numbers need to go up. Let's look at a minimum of $1,500. 63 loads. Let's look and see what we got. Oh, crap. I don't have a destination restriction on here. I'm not going to New York. I don't go to the Northeast. So, number one load is this a CGI load? No, VAM agency. So, both CGI and VAM have SIA contracts. Grand Prairie, Texas is most likely SIA. Fort Worth to Miami for 287 a mile. I usually have the Northeast and Florida excluded from my search results because it's you'll see tons of Florida loads paying like 250, 260 a mile, and those are horrible loads. And the load board will just be full of loads going to Florida that are just paying terrible money. So I typically just exclude Florida from my search results. Hmm. There's some decent loads on here, but nothing's jumping out at me as like a really amazing load. And let's sort this by revenue. I don't know why they sort this by agency code. It just doesn't make any sense. All right, New Jersey, New York, Florida, New Jersey, Pennsylvania. It's all the Northeast and Florida. All right, let's get down here. We got a Grand Prairie, which is Dallas to Salt Lake, the VAM agency. Florida, Colorado, Florida, Colorado, Florida, Colorado, New York, Pennsylvania. I would normally not see any of these search results. Louisville, Texas to Sioux Falls, South Dakota, LTL agency. This is one of the what air conditioning company is it that they have the contract with on this? Is it Ream and Rude? I think it's Ream and Rude, the consumer and commercial Ream and Rude out of Louisville. 6 extra stops on it, so it's 7 total deliveries. Going to your final deliveries in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. Eh, that's not that great. Not terrible, but not that great either. Just skimming through here, I'm not seeing anything that's really jumping out at me as a good load. Lots of mediocre loads. And the area we're searching in, the Dallas area, is one of the best places to find loads on Landstar's load board. Landstar agents have lots of contract freight coming out of the Dallas area. That's the end of the list. Let's see if there's any notes on these loads. These are a whole bunch of different agencies. Let me pause this. All right, we're okay. There's no comments. So let's look at the other one. This janky load board. No comments. This is there's a whole bunch of listings for the exact same load, and some of them are under different agency names. There are there's a lot of really scummy things that Landstar agents do, and certain agents kind of do the same scummy stuff over and over and over again. One of the things that I've only seen a few Landstar agents that do this, but they will list the same load like 10 times. Oh, sorry about that. That was probably really loud. That mic picks up any movement on the desk. Um, but yeah, I've called on loads with a certain agency I can't even remember the name of. And I remember it was in Texas. It was a load coming out of Texas, and they were like, "Yeah, that load's already covered." And they listed, and I was like, "Well, you have like 10 of them," and they said, "No, it was all just one load that we listed multiple times, and it's covered already." It's like, awesome, thanks. They do that because these load listings are advertisements, they're sales leads, they're marketing, just trying to generate a phone call. That's all they're doing. So they'll do really scummy things to try to generate a phone call. And once you deal with the load board for a long time, you'll start to pick up on stuff, and you'll look at loads. You'll be like, yeah, that's probably not a real load, or you'll start to catch on to the little things that they do, and you'll know not to even bother calling on certain loads the way that they're listed. All right, so I've got my load alert set up, and there's not any really awesome loads popping up on the board. What I'm specifically looking for is a load going up to like Portland. I like really big loads that pay a lot of money. I don't like doing a bunch of small loads. I like doing like one load that takes an entire week and pays, like 5,000 plus to the truck. That's ideally what I try to haul. So that's what I'm looking for. And I'm not seeing anything, not getting any load alerts. So let's look at some other stuff. So Oklahoma City, let's look at. I'm trying to remember what other areas people were asking about, wanting to see load board videos on. And I can't remember. All I remember was people asking about flatbeds. I think there was somebody asking about Oklahoma City area, and we've looked at the Oklahoma City area for we've looked at flatbeds across the all flatbed loads, and we also looked at the Oklahoma City area for dry van. Um, let's look at Portland. 250-mile radius around Portland is also going to get Seattle. 20 loads. And we're just looking at loads that are a minimum of $250 a mile, $1,500 revenue, and are contract loads, not spot market loads. Whatever loads you're seeing on the spot market, you're probably going to see that same stuff on Landstar's load board. Because there are Landstar agents that's all they do is repost spot market crap on a Landstar's load board. All right, what do we got? Let's sort by revenue. And the ROR agency, that window account, 25 stop load going from Staten, Oregon, which is just south of Portland, to Colorado Springs, Colorado. Not a good load. The last one of these that I looked at that was delivering across Colorado had you driving around the Rockies a lot. It wasn't just like driving across Wyoming and then coming down 25 and then delivering around the Denver, Colorado Springs area. No, it was like driving through Salt Lake into the western half of Colorado on the western side of the Rockies and then doing a whole bunch of deliveries all around Colorado, doing some bi-directional roads um, across the Rockies. Like it was a really, really bad load. Let's take a peek at this one and see if it's roughly the same route. See how horrible this load is. And yeah, it looks. Can you? Yeah, you can see it on full screen. Okay, so there's a stop. Okay, this makes it even worse. You have a stop in Elko, Nevada. So from Staten, Oregon, you're not going to be able to take 84 all the way to Salt Lake and then come down. You're going to have to find a way to cut down onto 80 in Nevada so that you can make a drop in Elko. I'm not sure exactly how you're going to do that. You're probably going to do this US 95. Maybe, I don't know. You're going to have to do some back roads. You're going to have to do some major back roading. You might be able to come down I-5 going to California and then take the 395 down to Reno and then I-80 across. It's going to add a lot of miles to your trip. You're going to be doing a lot of highway driving to be able to get down here to Elko, Nevada. This is a big wrench in this delivery. And then, yes, this is the same crap that I saw last time on these Colorado deliveries. You have a delivery next to Vail, which is a ski village. So this is up in the mountains. And then you have to come down to Montrose and then Cortez and Durango. And then you have to take some bi-directionals across the Rockies to get back over onto the east side of the Rockies and then do some drops in Pueblo and Colorado Springs. This is a major pain in the butt load. Not only does it have, 25 extra deliveries on it, but you're going to be doing a lot of backroading and you're going to be driving around the Colorado Rockies in the winter. This is going to be a major pain in the butt load. They are not paying anywhere close to enough to get somebody to haul this crap. I feel sorry for anybody who takes that load. But out of desperation or ignorance, somebody will likely take that load. And this is the SUL agency, which I think somebody told me this is the one that has the cabinet loads. They do loads out of Grants Pass, Oregon, which is close to the California border. 14 extra stops going to Idaho Falls, Idaho. $4.37 a mile. Probably still not worth it because you're going to have a huge deadhead afterward. You're delivering out in the middle of nowhere. I think almost every load is with those two agencies until you get down to right here. This is a different agency, the SMP agency, Lebanon, Oregon to Kalispell, Montana. Max weight load paying $5 a mile. Probably still not worth it delivering out in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, most of these loads are not very good. But almost every load coming out of the Portland area that's profitable, that pays any decent money, are just a couple of different agents, and they're terrible driver unload, 30 stop deliveries. So if you take a load up into the Portland, Seattle area, these are probably the loads you're going to end up taking out of those areas, are these driver unloads, because they're about the only thing that's profitable. I mean, they're not very good loads, but they're profitable. Some of them are a major pain in the butt. That one across Colorado, that one is a major pain in the butt load. But most of these loads, they're just delivering out in the middle of nowhere to where you're going to have to deadhead 700 miles to get your next load. And once you factor that in, then the pay on the load doesn't look very good anymore. So most of the loads that are decent coming out of here are going into California, and I can't go to California. I'm illegal in California. California requires a new certification just for California. You have to have a DEF certification, a diesel exhaust fluid certification for California, where they run a test on your truck, which basically it's not a test. They just pull all of the diagnostic information out off of your computer on your truck. And if there are any errors on your truck related to your fuel or exhaust system, then they will fail you. And I have errors on my truck with my diesel exhaust fluid system, with my DEF system. And so I can't pass the certification without spending several $1,000s replacing sensors on my DEF system. And I'm not willing to do that to be able to drive in California. The rates in California are not good enough for me to, dump a whole bunch of money into the DEF system. The DEF system still functions, it just has errors. And these errors don't even show on my dash. Like, they're not active errors that I can see. You can only see these errors if you hook a computer, one of those diagnostic computer programs, up to the truck. So I didn't even know I had these errors. They still don't show up. So they don't seem to be very important, but um, California's little test, all it does is pull any active errors. And if you have any active errors with your fuel or exhaust system, it fails you. Which I didn't think was going to be an issue because I didn't have any errors. But apparently I did have errors. They're just not being reported to the dash. All right, let's look at another area. Look at Chicago. 396 loads. That's a lot of loads. Chicago is a very dense area. We're looking at a 250-mile radius. So it's Chicago, Milwaukee, Green Bay, probably goes all the way to Detroit, and maybe even Cleveland, Ohio. Like Indianapolis might be in that 250-mile range. You're talking about a lot of major metropolitan areas within 250 miles of Chicago. So let's sort this by revenue. Come on. There we go. And I'm going to skim through these. I'm not even going to bother looking at the loads. I'm just going to skim through them. If you're interested, then you can look at it and you can pause the video on it. But yeah, whenever I leave the house, I'm hoping to find a load coming out of the Dallas area headed to Portland. A nice big load. And then out of Portland, I'm gonna hopefully be able to get one of the JQL loads, one of the Google loads coming out of like the Dales or Gresham Dolls. I forgot. Somebody told me how it's pronounced last time I was up there, and I've already forgotten how it's pronounced. I think they said it's pronounced Dolls or something like that. Um, but hopefully, I'm able to get one of the Google loads. If not, I might end up doing another one of those damn window loads. I don't want to ever do another one of those window loads again. They were a major pain in the butt, but got to make money. So I might end up doing another one of those. Oh, got a load alert. Park City, Kansas to Raleigh, North Carolina for $2.51 a mile. That's horrible. Well, while I was at home, I watched the. I don't normally watch football games. Once we get to the end of the season, I try to watch the playoffs. I thought this was the first year of the 12-team playoff, but it actually started last year. And I missed out on the college playoffs last year. I think I might have watched the championship game. Maybe. I can't remember. But yeah, I can't believe that I missed the first year of the 12-team playoff. So this is year two of the 12-team playoff. And there are some fairly no name schools that are up in the rankings, like the Indiana Hoosiers football team. Indiana Hoosiers are popular for basketball, and they're not even really a very good basketball team. The Indiana Hoosiers football team is not known as a good football team, but apparently they've been pretty good the last few years. They are the number one team in the country this year, and I watched their conference championship game where they played Ohio State a couple of days ago. Wow, that was impressive. Both teams had an absolutely phenomenal defense. And Indiana's defensive line is scary. Like they are scary good. Like the pressure that they put onto the Ohio State quarterback and just shutting everything down, man, their defensive linemen are amazing. All right, let's check another area. What are we gonna do here? You know what? Let's search all of Landstar. Let's get rid of the origin. And let's just do loads that are a minimum of $5,000. 138 loads. You know what? Let's do a minimum of $2 a mile. 190 loads. Let's just see what kind of big money loads there are out there. Used to, whenever I first started with Landstar during the freight boom, whenever you would do this, there would be a whole bunch of loads for like $100,000. Landstar used to have tons of like tours on their load board where you could sign up for like a 3 month tour to, all kinds of stuff. Like tons and tons of different types of tours. Uh, you know, like holiday shows that traveled around and stuff like that. It wasn't, when people think of tours, they think of like some really big band. I don't think most of the tours were like some band. I think it was just like traveling circus type stuff. But I never did any of those loads because they never paid that well. They looked amazing, like 100 grand over 3 months, but you could make more than that by just running regular loads back then. So they weren't really very good loads. They weren't bad, but they also weren't very good. And a lot of them had some very high requirements. Um, but anyway, you don't see those. I haven't seen those types of loads on the load board for a long time. There's a lot of types of loads I don't see on the load board anymore. I used to judge the Los Angeles area, the Southern California market, by how many loads over $8,000 there were whenever I would search the LA area. Now, across all of Landstar's load board for dry van contract freight, there are one, two, three, four, five, six loads over $8,000. Six loads across Landstar's entire load board for contract freight dry van. And I remember when the LA market was really, really good, there were times when there were like, I think over 30 loads that were over $8,000, 30 or 40 loads over $8,000 just in the LA area. We're in a really bad freight market. All right, so we'll just skim through here. But yeah, there's a bunch of drama going on with the college football playoffs because Notre Dame was left out. There doesn't seem to be any consistency in how the college football playoff selection committee is like ranking teams. And that's been the problem with college football forever, is that it's nothing is decided based off of like, there's not like clear definitions of, you do this and this happens, and it's all subjective. It's all just people, giving their opinions, and their opinions determine the rankings. That's the reason they moved to a playoff system initially. That's the reason they moved to the, well, not a playoff system, but the BCS system was created. Initially, the BCS system just chose the top two teams to play against each other in a national championship game. And that wasn't sufficient. So they expanded it to a 4-team playoff, and then they expanded the 4-team playoff to a 12-team playoff. And they're still having issues that people are disagreeing with the selection committee's choices, and people think that Notre Dame has a really good chance of winning the national championship, and they were completely left out of the playoff. And we've got teams like James Madison, and what was that other, Tulane? James Madison and Tulane have zero chance of winning the national championship, but they're in the playoff. So it's still a terrible system in which it's not really, allowing the best team to win the national championship. So now they're all the 12-team playoffs. This is only the second year, and they're already talking about expanding it to like 16 or 24 teams. Ah, man. That is like, the more they expand the playoff system, the more they diminish the regular season. The college football playoffs, the BCS system in general, already destroyed the bowl system Because used to, the bowls mattered. All of the bowl games were huge before the BCS system because they affected the final team rankings. So, how well you did in your bowl game affected whether or not you won the national championship. And you weren't just concerned about your team doing well in a bowl game, you were also concerned about everyone else and how they did. Because every one of the people that you beat, if they did really well in their bowl games, then that helped your strength of schedule. It made you look better. If teams in your conference did well, it made your conference look better. If your opponents, let's say that, it was between Oklahoma and Texas for a national championship. They were the number one and number two teams. Well, they would care about like every single one of their opponents. So you would want the people that Texas lost to do poorly. Everyone Texas played, you would want all of their opponents to do poorly, and you would want all of your opponents to do well so that, strength of schedule, it made your team look better than them. So all of the bowl games mattered. Even the crappy bowl games, people watched that and they mattered because they affected strength of schedule. But whenever they implemented the BCS system, it made bowl games completely worthless. They were just exhibition games. They had no impact on final rankings. And the more they expand the BCS system, the more it trivializes bowl games that are not part of the playoff. So I don't know. Maybe they should just expand to, do what NCAA basketball does and have like a 64 team December Madness tournament for football. Just reduce the regular season schedule by a couple of games and just have a massive playoff at the end of the season. I don't know if I prefer the BCS system or what happened before the BCS system. There are things I like about both systems. I really like how important bowl games used to be before the BCS system. Like watching bowl games was a really big deal throughout the holidays. And now the bowl games are just meaningless exhibition games that I don't think anybody bothers watching um, unless they're a bowl game in the playoff. But what I like about the BCS system is that it's better at finding the best team. But that right there brings in another problem that college teams typically lack consistency. You can have the five best teams in the nation play each other 10 times and no one's going undefeated. So, putting the best teams into a playoff, you really don't know the outcome because any one of those teams that are one of the top teams could win against the other team, 50% of the time. Like it's 70% of the time. I've never seen a team that was so dominant that they're going to win 100% of the time against, top opponents. All right, what else are we going to search here? Let's do. Well, this will be the last search. Let's do the Florida area. Let's do Lakeland, Florida. You know what? This may not be the last search because there might not be any results for Lakeland. Okay, for $2 a mile and $1,500, let's do $1,000. One load. So at 70%, you're talking about a load that's paying $1.30 a mile. No, $1.40 a mile. My bad. This is the reason you don't go to Florida. Lakeland, Florida to Lakeland, Florida. 2 extra stops, paying $2.22 a mile. This has been sitting on the load board for 12 days. It's a really bad load. Let's look at the map. It's going to from Lakeland to Durham, North Carolina, back to Lakeland. No, yeah, it's got. This might actually just be two different loads. So you're going from Lakeland to Durham, and then Durham back to Lakeland. So there's two stops in Durham. This is most likely two different loads that are just packaged together as one. And it doesn't pick up until December 28th. That would be another reason. That it's been sitting on the load board for so long. People don't. Somebody replied to a video and was just being really rude to someone else. I ended up blocking them because I don't want to deal with dumbasses. So if you come into the comment section spewing a bunch of nonsense, I'm probably going to block you. But they came in there and they were like, the reason you can't find loads is because everybody books their loads weeks in advance. That is not true. It's just like what people say things that are just not true all the time. So yeah, loads that don't pick up for several days typically sit on the load board until it gets closer to pickup time because most people don't book loads very far in advance because it's really hard to tell where you're going to be in a week running random loads off the load board. All right, let's go and we'll do one more. We'll do the Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. We'll do the New York City, Baltimore area. Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. 250-mile radius around Philadelphia. I think that's going to get New York City and Baltimore. It'll get all that area, I think. 361 loads. We're going to have to increase. Let's bump it back up to $1,500, not 15,000, and 250 a mile. Now we're down to 168 loads. All right, and we'll skim through those. Let's sort it by revenue. There we go. So we'll just skim through and you can pause and look at them if you're interested. So yeah, I think I might try and watch the college football playoffs. Living in Oklahoma, we have two teams in Oklahoma that most people cheer for: OU Sooners and Oklahoma State Cowboys. I would say most people are Sooner fans. The Cowboys rarely are like in contention for a national championship or even a conference championship. And I used to live in Norman, probably a couple hundred yards away from the campus. I used to live really close to the campus. Back when OU won the national championship, back in like 2000, I lived basically on campus. I lived in an apartment like a couple hundred yards from campus, off campus. So, like, there was a massive street party that happened when they won that national championship, and I went right through the middle of it on the way to my house. I watched the game at a buddy's house that lived on the other side of campus. We both lived on Lindsay Street. Lindsay Street goes right through the middle of OU campus. And I lived on the east side of the campus, and he lived on the west side of the campus. So I watched the game at his house, and then after the game was over, he was like, "Let's drive down Lindsay Street to your house." I was like, "No, Lindsay is going to be chaos." And he's like, "We're only going to get this one chance. Like, you're going to regret not doing this." And I was like, "Fine. It's going to take us an hour to drive like a quarter of a mile." But he talked me into it. We did it. And it was a good decision. It was a good experience. You know, everybody was really happy. Uh, there were a lot of people out and about on Lindsay Street after the game. So I guess that kind of makes me more of an OU fan than an OSU fan. But I'm also, you know, an OSU fan. And Oklahoma State, I don't know why they fired Mike Gundy. Mike Gundy was probably the best coach that they will ever get. um, Oklahoma State just doesn't have the brand, the reputation to be able to recruit top tier talent. And Mike Gundy was doing really well for the brand that he was working with, the school that he was working with. He was like in contention for Big 12 championships, conference championships and stuff like that. I thought he was doing really well. He was recruiting some NFL level talent onto the team. But some idiots thought that the team should have been doing better and they decided to fire Mike Gundy. And as soon as they fired him, they went like 0 and 12. I think they won one game this season. That shows how big of an impact he had on the team. And now they've got some new coach. We'll see how that coach does, but I think it was a bad decision to get rid of Mike Gundy. I think the expectations for Oklahoma State were a little bit too high if Mike Gundy wasn't meeting expectations. All right, we're at the bottom of the list. So that's pretty much it. I'm getting very few load alerts. It's now 10:13 a.m. and I'm just sitting around waiting for. Let me flip this back over to just me and let's check the email again and see if trailer utilization is stealing the trailer yet. They usually send out the emails that they're stealing your trailer around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm just dreading getting one of those emails from trailer utilization while I'm sitting here waiting for the trailer to get out of the shop. Because you would think, and this is what trailer maintenance told me, is that it's just common sense. The trailer's in the shop. You know, I can't haul a load with the trailer right now. So why would they take the trailer? You know, just tell them, you know, the trailer's in the shop. That's the reason I haven't been hauling a load with it. And you would think that they would just go be like, oh, okay, sorry about that. We'll take you off the list. But no, that's not what interacting with trailer utilization is like. It's like talking to somebody who's not competent, um, who's just like going off of a script and is not capable of rational thought. It's really, really frustrating to interact with them. So I'm just really, really dreading that. I'm trying to book a load as quickly as possible. Even though I don't know when exactly the trailer is going to be ready, I'm hopeful that the trailer will be ready today or tomorrow. And I'm trying to book a load that's going to pick up sometime, you know, like 2+ days from now. I'm not trying to book something that picks up today or tomorrow because I probably won't have a trailer to pick the load up with. I'm trying to book a load that doesn't pick up for at least 2 days just to get trailer utilization off my back. But we'll see. We'll see. So that's the load board video. Um, the freight market still sucks. You know what? Let me do a quick search on see if there's any other trucking news besides CRST cutting back. Just a second here. All right, just skimming through the headlines. U.S. Express is also laying people off because of a bad freight market. So CRST is cutting back. U.S. Express is cutting back. And then there's some mid-sized companies that went out of business with like a couple hundred trucks. But I'm not seeing any other big news. I mean, just lots of like mid-size companies, small to mid-size, like 70, 100, 200 truck companies going out of business. Here's an article by Freightwave saying 50 truck fleet shuts down. Oh, that's, I thought it was 50 fleets shut down. No, it was a single trucking company with 50 trucks. It's the same. Park City, Kansas to Greensboro, North Carolina. They increased the price by 10 cents a mile. You see a lot of that on Landstar's load board right now is loads coming in at below operating cost prices, and then they'll bump it by five. They'll repost it like an hour later with 5 more cents per mile or 10 more cents per mile. You see a lot of that on Landstar's load board. They're trying to move these loads at just ridiculously cheap rates. Thousands of U.S. trucking schools could lose accreditation after DOT crackdown. What are they cracking down on? Oh, this is NPR, which is a radical left news agency. So, what is the spin here? Context is important. So, be careful of how they're going to try to spin this. Yeah. Oh, immediately in the very first sentence, they're blaming it on the Trump administration. This politicized crap. What exactly is it that they're shutting them down for? I've made it through 2 paragraphs and it hasn't been mentioned yet. 5 paragraphs, it still hasn't been mentioned. Now they're starting to preach their propaganda about illegal immigrants, about how they're good for the country and Trump is a fascist and all the rest of that stupid crap. Like it's ridiculous how like politicized all of the news agencies are. So they don't give any detail as to exactly what they're cracking down on. They're just basically saying that they're not meeting standards. Um, this is the only sentence in which they actually talk about what they're cracking down on, and I'll read it verbatim. The department accuses them of falsifying or manipulating training data, neglecting to meet required curriculum standards and instructor qualifications, and failing to maintain or share accurate records. So they're basically accusing them of being CDL mills, where they're just making shit up. They're not doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're not giving the training that they're required to do. They're just telling them, do this, and do this to pass your CDL test. Um, so they're just like teaching them maneuvers to be able to pass the CDL test. And a lot of these places actually have the ability to do the CDL road test. I think I can't remember what the details are, but I think that um, the facility or business or whatever that trains you for your like CDL school is not allowed to be the same one that tests you for your CDL test. So you can still have like two companies that are technically separate doing those things. And I think that's what a lot of these mega carriers do is they have like a company that they pay to do the training, and then they have someone on the mega carrier staff that does the licensing test. Um, that's how a lot of these people get licenses that should not have licenses, is that the person doing the test is not really doing a proper test on them. But yeah, there's a lot of people with CDLs that weren't trained properly and they weren't tested properly. They actually could not pass a real test to get a license. And they're saying that, I think on here it says 40% of CDL schools are not meeting requirements. That means like half the drivers that have CDLs did not receive minimum training, minimum required training. That's scary, but I believe it. So that's let's wrap up the load board video there. We looked looking at a 250-mile radius around, what was it, Oklahoma City, which is basically also the Dallas area, and then Chicago, Portland, and then Central Florida, and then the Philadelphia, New York City, Baltimore area. We looked at a lot of freight markets around the country. That a 250-mile radius around those areas covers a lot of freight. So that should give you a really good idea of what it's like on Landstar's load board across the country. And remember that we were just looking at contract freight. Well, things that Landstar agents are flagging as contract freight. Some of it might have been spot market freight. So, yeah, there's a lot more loads. We were just looking at the roughly 5,000 contract loads. There were 73,000 loads that we weren't looking at because it's make believe fantasy land spot market crap. And if you ever get the urge to go get your own authority and run off the spot market, after dealing with spot market loads, it's something that you probably don't ever want to deal with. The spot market is a great place to be whenever the freight market is at all-time highs. It is the worst place to be if we're not in a great freight market. If we're in a mediocre or bad freight market, the spot market is the worst place to be. But if we're in a freight market where they're just throwing money at anybody, then the spot market is an awesome place to be. You can make a killing whenever companies are desperate to move freight. That's the reason I personally choose to lease Landstar. I don't think Landstar is the best option for everybody. It's the best option I've found for me because it gives me access to contract freight and it gives me access to spot market freight. When we're at an all-time high, freight market, I'll start looking at spot market loads. Like right now, I don't even want to see that crap. But if the freight market goes up, not only do I have access to the contract freight, I also have access to spot market freight here. I have access to, both. So I think it's a good place to be. But I've never had my own authority. I've never run off of, DAT load board. I've never run off of, the actual spot market. I've only run loads off of, Landstar and USA Trucks load boards in which they have some spot market loads on there. So I don't really know what the spot market is like. I've never run off of the spot market. So take what I say with about it, with a grain of salt. Do more research. Figure out if it's for you or not. But anyway, let's wrap up this video. And I was in the middle of watching. I wanted to do this video during the like peak load board time. It's not worth it to do a load board video at night or on the weekend or late in the afternoon. There's a time period when the load board is the most active, and that's like 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. And so I tried to do this load board video I try to do all my load board videos during that activity time. So I was actually in the middle of watching a movie. I was watching Bohemian Rhapsody. The movie about Queen. I've seen it before, but I decided to watch it again. I saw some like short video about a scene in it or something. I was like, oh, I'd like to watch that again. So about halfway through it. So I'll finish watching that while I sit around waiting on load alerts to come in. So anyway, have a good one. And whenever I get back out over the road, I'll probably start making videos again. Bye.